Today we will give a series of talks on a discourse called Silavanta Sutta. Although this sutta is a very short discourse in the Sayutta Nikaya Khandavagga, we try to make this exposition as complete as possible. So we draw from other relevant discourses and commentaries and include them in this discourse. This Silavanta Sutta is a discussion between two of the Buddha's foremost monks, Venerable Sariputra and Venerable Makutika. Venerable Sariputra is too well known to need any introduction. You all know who Venerable Sariputra was. Venerable Sariputra was the first chief disciple of the Buddha who declared him to be the foremost of the disciples possessing wisdom. He was second only to the Buddha in the field of wisdom. But Venerable Makutika is not so well known as the Venerable Sariputra. So you don't hear much about him. Venerable Makutika was declared by the Buddha to be foremost among those of the disciples possessing Patisambhida, the four kinds of analytical knowledge, Atta Patisambhida, Dhamma Patisambhida, Nirodhi Patisambhida, and Patipanna Patisambhida, four kinds of analytical knowledge attained only by arahants and others who have reached enlightenment. An exception is the Venerable Ananda, who is described as attaining Patisambhida, while only as Sotapanna during the lifetime of the Buddha. During the time of the Buddha, these two Venerable Sariputra and Venerable Makutika stay at Varanasi in the Deer Park at Isipatana, where the Buddha had given his first sermon, Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. Now a very famous place of Buddhist pilgrimage. Whenever the Deer Park at Isipatana is mentioned, people always think of the first sermon, Dhammacakka Sutta. And also we should remember the Silavanta Sutta also, even though it was not delivered by the Buddha. Although it is a discussion between the two disciples, Venerable Sariputra and Venerable Makutika, It was considered worthy of being recorded in the Samyutta Nikaya and therefore is authentic as the sutra given by the Buddha. It is the custom of the Buddha's disciples, especially those who have attained enlightenment, to dwell in seclusion in the afternoon. Staying in seclusion, patisalana, does not mean just resting or sleeping. During this time, arahants and others who are enlightened enter into the attainment of fruition, in which there is no suffering, no dukkha. Their minds rest on nibbana, giving them great peace and happiness. So they often enter into this attainment as a temporary escape during the hours of seclusion. The two venerable followed this practice. Late one afternoon, the Venerable Makutika emerged from his seclusion, approached the Venerable Sariputra, and exchanged greetings. It is the customary of disciple of the Buddha when they meet. Then he asked, Silavata uso Sariputra Bhikkhuna Katame Dhamma Yoniso Manasi Katapa. Auso Sariputra, what are the things that virtuous bhikkhus should carefully attend to? Venerable Makutika asks Venerable Sariputra. The Venerable Makutika seemed to be fond of asking questions. On other occasions, in other discourses, again he is found putting questions to Venerable Sariputra. Venerable Makutika is foremost among those who possessed the four kinds of analytical knowledge, Patisambhida. He should have been the one answering the question, not asking them. But he was always asking questions. Why? He asked the question not because he did not know the answers, but because he wanted posterity to respect the Buddha's teaching. People tended to give more respect and importance to teaching, known to have been discussed by great disciples of the Buddha. So Venerable Makutika and Venerable Sariputra, as foremost disciples, sometimes purposely enter into dialogues or question and answer for the benefits of posterity. And this discussion, the Silavanta Sutta, was considered important enough for inclusion in the Samyutta Nikaya. The Venerable Makutika had addressed his friend as Avuso Sariputra. During the time of the Buddha, the monks, regardless of age, could freely address one another with the word Avuso. The translation being friend. This does not mean that nobody used Bande, Venerable Sir. At that time, pupils addressed their teachers as Bande because the familiarity implied by Avuso would be disrespectful. Or if the difference in age were great, the younger monk might address the older as Bande, and the older would address the younger as Avuso. Because the two venerable address each other as Avuso, we do not know which of the two was older. And before the Buddha passed away, he said to Ananda, after my passing away, older monks should address younger monks as Avuso, and younger monks should address older monks as Bande. Buddha said to Ananda, and after the Venerable Makutika had addressed the Venerable Sariputra, he asked, what are the things that a virtuous bhikkhus should carefully attend to? Here we need to explain more details. Silavanta, virtuous, and bhikkhu, bhikkhuna, bhikkhu. A virtuous bhikkhu, Silavanta bhikkhuna. Virtuous bhikkhu is pure in the sila, morality. It is not easy as monks have more than 200 rules to keep. When a monk can keep more than 200 rules without breaking them, his sila is said to be pure and he is said to be virtuous, silawa. Those who have been newly ordained are also pure in sila, as they have not yet committed any offense. And monks who have broken some rules but have made amends and corrected their faults may also be said to be pure in sila. So a monk who is pure in sila may be a monk who has broken no rules, or he can be a monk who had broken a rule or two, but has developed enough judgment and self-discipline to be free from further offenses. Such a bhikkhu is called a virtuous monk or a monk pure in sila, silawa. A monk once asked the Buddha to teach him just enough to enable him to go to a secluded place and practice meditation. And Buddha told him to begin by purifying two things: pure sila, suvisoda sila, and right view, samadhi, before attempting to undertake the practice of meditation. Why? Because the practice of Satipatthana meditation, the four foundations of mindfulness, is based on pure sila. Purity of sila is an especially important requisite for meditators. So Buddha said, Bhikkhu, when you have purified your sila and maintained the right view, then leaning on your sila and standing on it, you may go on to developing the four foundations of mindfulness in three modes: contemplating on internal object, contemplating on external object, and then contemplating on internal and external object. So a monk who wishes to practice meditation should first purify his sila. Lay people must also be pure in sila when practicing meditation. Nowadays, the word bhikkhu is translated as monk. Originally, the word meant a person who begs, and a bhikkhu is a person who begs. Bhikkhati yachati bhikkhu. A bhikkhu is a person who begs. But the begging done by bhikkhu is not the same as the begging done by beggars. Bhikkhus pick up their bowls and go out for alms round to collect food for their one daily meal, silently standing in front of the house, and they say nothing. The lay people inside understand that the bhikkhus are dependent on them for food. So with respect and reverence, they offer whatever food they can give. Then the monk continue on to other houses in the same way, standing, saying nothing, accepting whatever is given, and sometimes being turned away. This kind of begging is called noble begging. And bears no resemblance to the begging of ordinary street beggars. As the practice still exists in Buddhist country, it is important that the word bhikkhu should not be considered as beggar, which would be very, very degrading to the monks. Another meaning to the word bhikkhu, sansari bhaya ekaditi bhikkhu. Many kinds of suffering are endured in the rounds of rebirth. As goes from one life to another and is reborn again and again. So it is something to be feared. According to this meaning, anybody who sees the rounds of rebirth as dangerous can be called a bhikkhu, whether you are a monk or a lay person. Samsara, Samsara is dukkha. What is samsara? The continuous flows of one process after another, seeing process, now hearing, after then touching, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. These continuous flows. So one after another is flowing continuously, arising and disappearing. So it is dukkha sacca, truth of suffering. Samsara dukkha, people don't know. So they think samsara life is, this process is sukha, happiness. Not knowing the true nature of suffering, and thinking that this process, seeing, hearing, etc., is pleasurable, it is avijja, ignorance. And he is ignorance and he like it, he desires, it is tanha, desire. And then he cling to this process. Avijja, tanha, and upadana, ignorance, desire, craving, and clinging. This is kilesa vata, rounds of kilesa, rounds of defilements. And he cling to this process, and then he tried to get it, that is karma. So long as kilesa and karma are there, you have to go from one life to another, and he is reborn again and again. It is so frightening. But he regards them as pleasurable and he become attached to them. Avijja, tanha, and upadana, ignorance, craving, and clinging conspire together to create kilesavata, the rounds of defilements. So he gets born and die to be reborn again and die again and again. So according to this meaning, anybody who see the rounds of rebirth as dangerous can be called a bhikkhu. Whether you are a monk or a lay person, if you see the rounds of rebirth as dangerous, suffering, you can be called a bhikkhu. But in most cases, a bhikkhu means one who has gone forth from the world, a monk who is the Buddha's disciple. So Venerable Makutika first question was, what are the things that a virtuous bhikkhu should carefully attend to? Here, Yonisom Manasikatapa, carefully attend to, means wisely attend to, correctly attend to or pay correct attention to something. And Venerable Sariputta answered, Avuso Kutika, a virtuous bhikkhu should carefully attend to the five aggregates subject to clinging as impermanent. He should carefully attend to the five aggregates of clinging as suffering, as a disease, as a tumor, as empty, as non-self, as death, as misery, as affliction, as alien, as dissolution. So you have to know that this answer contains the words five aggregates subject to clinging, upadanakanda. In some translation, this phrase is translated simply as five aggregates of clinging. Because there is a difference, you should understand the correct meanings of these phrases. There are the two things to be examined here. Number one, the kanda, the aggregates and clinging, upadana. And number two, the aggregates that are subject to clinging, upadana kanda, meaning aggregates that are objects of clinging or aggregates that can become objects of clinging. But you should first understand what clinging is. It means firmly holding on to something. When clinging to something, you take hold of it and do not let it go. The Buddha teaches that clinging is of two kinds. Clinging is a mental state, and with that mental state, we cling to objects. Suppose you see something beautiful, something desirable. When something is beautiful, you desire it, and you have a strong craving to possess it. And you see something undesirable, when something is ugly, but you embrace it. And you have a strong, irritating sensation again and again. Also, you cling. Irritation. In this case, you cling to the objects by strong craving. In other words, things are the objects of strong desire, strong craving, or clinging. That is tanha. And wrong view, ditthi, can also cause clinging to objects. Sometimes we have wrong views about objects and we think that they are permanent. We think that they possess a self or soul. Or we may have wrong views about ourselves. We may think we have a self or we have a soul, or we may take being to be self or soul. When we apply these kinds of wrong views to objects, we are clinging to them, so we can cling to an object with strong craving or with wrong view. Anything that we can cling to, either with strong craving or wrong view, tanha and ditthi, is called an aggregate subject to clinging. What are the things we can cling to? We can, we can cling to the things what we see, we can cling to things what we hear, what we smell, we taste, what we touch and think of. In other words, we can cling to everything in the world. We can cling to everything in the world either by wrong view or by strong craving. When we say this is I, we are clinging by wrong view. But when we say this is mine, we are clinging by craving. The things we cling to are technically termed aggregates, khanda in Pali. They are called aggregates because they are understood in groups. A group here does not mean a group of different things. It means a group of aspects of a things. Take for example, a visible object. There are 28 kinds of matter, rupa, and that visible object is just one unit of matter. One unit of rupa, one unit of matter is not a group of many things. It is only one, yet it is called an aggregate. How can that be? It is because one unit of matter can be of the past, one unit of matter can be of the future, one unit of matter can be of the present. With the grouping together of these three aspects of time, that one unit of rupa, one unit of matter, becomes an aggregates. Rupa aggregates. And also Vedana feeling. Feeling is a mental state. Feeling is just one mental state, one mental factors, one cetasika. But that one mental factor is also called an aggregate because it can be of the past, it can be of the future, and it can be of the present. It also can be internal and it also can be external. It can be gross and it can be subtle and so on. Because of the many varying aspects that it possesses, Vedana feeling is called an aggregate, Vedana Khanda. You have now seen that just one unit of rupa, one unit of metta is called an aggregate. And just one mental state is called an aggregate. Even one unit of metta is called an aggregate. Technically, they each are called an aggregate. There are 5 such aggregates taught in Buddhism. You all practitioners of Vipassana, you are familiar with them and with their names. And 5 aggregates, Rupa Kanda, Vedana Kanda, Sinya Kanda, Sankara Kanda, and Vijnana Kanda. 5 khandas. Form aggregates, feeling aggregates, perception aggregates, volitional formation aggregates, and consciousness aggregates. You understand the first one, also rupa aggregates, metta aggregates, rather than form aggregates, because every unit of metta is called metta aggregates. Rupa metta is something that changes with adverse condition like heat, cold, hunger, and so on. It can be found outside in the mountains, in trees, in living beings, and also all material phenomena. And you all know what the feeling aggregates within a khandha is. The feeling of pleasure, the feeling of displeasure, and the feeling of neutral. These feelings are called the feeling aggregates. Although feeling is only one mental factor, it is called an aggregate because it has division into past, present, future, and many other aspects. The third one is Sinyakanda, perception aggregates. Perception is a mental state that makes marks of an object. Whenever we encounter or experience a new object, this mental state makes a mark of that object in our mind. So when we experience the object again, we recognize what it is. That is what is meant here by perception. This function of perception is compared to a carpenter making pieces of wood when he's building something. The marks indicate which part is to be put where, which part is to be cut off, which is to be retained, and so on. Making marks like this is for his recognition later, when he needs the various pieces of wood. Just so, when your mind makes a mark of something new to you, it is for your future recognition. This perception is just one mental state, but because it has division into past, present, future, and so on. It is called Sinyakanda perception aggregates. Another aggregate is Sankarakanda, volitional formation aggregates. It is somewhat difficult to understand. According to Abhidhamma, there are 52 mental states, 52 cetasika. Feeling is one mental factor, perception is another mental factor, and the remaining 50 mental states are collectively called Sankarakanda, volitional formation aggregates. Because this group is headed by a mental factor called volition or chetana. The word formation is the translation of the Pali words Sankara. Sankara can mean both producer and product. Something that produces other things is called Sankara. And that which it produces or which is conditioned by it is also called Sankara. So Sankara has at least two meanings, the maker and that which is made. In the context of the volition of formation aggregates, Sankarakanda, it means maker. It makes something. Here we must understand the word Sankara in its active sense. Some Pali says Sankara Gadalupama. Sankara is likened to banana trunk like this. But in other contexts, such as saying Sabbe Sankara nature, all Sankaras are impermanent. Sabbe Sankara nature, all Sankaras are impermanent. The word Sankara means all things that are conditioned. All things that are conditioned by karma, citta, udu, and ahara, or namarupa, or five khandhas are conditioned by karma, citta, udu, ahara. So here the meaning is quite different from Sankara, meaning those that make, and which is translated as formation. Maybe there is no other words to adequately convey the meaning carried by the original Pali words. So the 50 mental states are collectively called Sankhara aggregates or volitional formation aggregates. In addition to volition or chetana, Sankhara, sati, mindfulness is also Sankhara, pinya, understanding is Sankhara, lobha, attachment is Sankhara, dosa, hatred is Sankhara, moha, delusion is Sankhara. There are many Sankharas. All of these are collectively called sankhara because they do something. For instance, when we see something, a kind of mental activities that makes seeing complete takes place, this kinds of mental activities is called sankhara. And the last aggregates is the consciousness aggregates. Consciousness is awareness of the object. Here it must be understood in its technical sense, not as it is understood popularly. In Abhidhamma, consciousness means just a mere awareness of the object. It is always accompanied by feeling, perception, and other factors from the volitional formation aggregates. So there are the 5 aggregates: Rupa Khanda, Metta aggregates, Vedana Khanda, feeling aggregates, Sanya Khanda, perception aggregates, Sankhara Khanda, volitional formation aggregates, Vijnana Khanda, consciousness aggregates. When they are objects of clinging, they are called aggregates of clinging, Upadana Khanda. Aggregates subject to clinging or aggregates objects of clinging. Now you know the 5 aggregates and the 5 aggregates are clinging. Let us see now whether we can find the 5 aggregates by looking at something. So when we see something, there is something to be seen. There is a visible object, and there are eyes, retina, through which the object is seen. And then there is seeing consciousness which arises when the object to be seen comes into the avenue of the eye sensitivity. So seeing consciousness arises, and when we see with that consciousness. So here we see how many aggregates. The thing we see is Rupa aggregates, Metta aggregates, and consciousness aggregates, Vijnana Khanda. And when we see something, it can be pleasurable, not pleasurable, or neutral. We might think it is good to see this object, or it is not good to see it. So feeling is also involved when we see something. And whenever we see an object, the mind or a state of mind makes a mental mark of that object, so it can be recognized when we experience it later. So sanya perception also is involved in the act of seeing. They are mental state that exert to make some effort to see to bring this seeing to completion, though it is very subtle. If you really watch your mind, you will notice that there is a kind of activities, there is a kind of exertion in your mind to see, to hear, to smell, and so on. So that is Sankara, the volitional formation aggregates. So yogi do not need to look in books to find the five aggregates. Yogi, they can be found in your own experience. Now, according to the instruction, whenever you see, you note seeing, seeing, seeing. And you can capture the aggregates, you can capture the namarupa. You can capture the visible object or seeing consciousness or eye sensitivity or feelings or eye contact. They are momentary appearing. When you observe more continuously and precisely, you can capture these phenomena uh, uh, appearing. And when your concentration getting strengthened, you can see also these phenomena, this process arising and disappearing. So we continue next week. We have to stop our discourse for today by practicing Satipatthana meditation, by observing every phenomena occurring at the six senses, by noting, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, continuously and meticulously. May all yogis capture the true namarupa, and true aggregates correctly. May all yogis realize the real peace in the very near future.